What up, folks? I'm back once again doing another video game review, and this time I'm reviewing Double Dragon for the Nintendo Game Boy, and it was made by Trade West, pretty much like the NES version. As a matter of fact, this game has a lot of similarities to the NES version due to the fact that it was made by Trade West. It's pretty much like the soundtrack, enemies, weapons, and such. It is something that you will find in this game. It comes from pretty much the NES version. As a matter of fact, it pretty much has the same plot as the NES version, where Billy Lee's girlfriend Marion gets kidnapped by the Shadow Warriors, and he has to go and save her. And another thing is, has a similar thing, is moves also, like punches and kicks and stuff like that. And now Double Dragon for Game Boy pretty much has formations like the NES version. You can use pretty much weapons like barrels, bats, baseball bats, boxes, knives, and baseball. Already mentioned the baseball bats, but it's pretty much these are the types of weapons you can use, like including the knife. Now, the only weapon that was excluded was the whip for some reason. I mean, it's not that big of a deal because the whip is not included. And the bosses there are four bosses in the game. The first one is a Bobo on stage 1, and then there's another one on stage 3. And Chin is the boss of stage 2, and the leader of the Shadow Gang is the last boss, and it was equipped with a machine gun, pretty much like the NES version. And this is something that I pretty much have been harping on in this entire video, because the similarity between this game and the NES version is pretty much hard to miss. You know what I'm saying? That is the only reason I'm mentioning the similarities. And the only difference that I saw in it is the design. There's like the enemies that show up aren't as many. That came from the NES version. A lot of them are not in this particular version. Yeah. And then the only reason I could come up with is mainly because of the limitation of a Game Boy. If there's any other reason that you can think of, you can mention it in the comment section. Now, the graphics and gameplay of Double Dragon for Game Boy is pretty decent, you know what I'm saying? I just don't have any, no real major complaints with it, you know. And the gameplay, even though it is similar to the NES version of Double Dragon, it's pretty decent, but at the same time, it doesn't have any, it didn't set any new standards for the beat 'em up genre and for a lot of the handheld titles that pretty much came after it, you know. And the soundtrack, even though it is pretty much the NES version of Double Dragon, it holds its own, but at the same time, Trade West could have had an entirely different soundtrack altogether, like Capcom did with Mega Man when it was released for the Game Boy, and same thing with Konami. They have an entirely different soundtrack for Castlevania Avengers and the other two Castlevania games that came after it on Game Boy. But it's kind of like some gamers might be turned off by the similarities that Double Dragon for Game Boy has with the NES counterpart, but it is a decent game that's worth checking out, you know. And truth be told, I would recommend this to retro gamers, fans of the beat 'em up genre, and the Double Dragon franchise as a whole. As far as the score is concerned, I would definitely give Double Dragon for Game Boy a 7, mainly because the similarities are hard to miss, you know, and they could have been Trey Rich could have started, we could have had an entirely different plot, new enemies, more moves than they have in the game, and different weapons too. I just like they stuck with. I guess their attitude was they really broke to fix it, you know, and, it didn't like make sense to me in that regard, you know. With that being said, if you like Double Dragon for Game Boy, you can mention it in the comment section. But if you prefer Double Dragon for NES, you can mention that also. If you like this game, this review of Double Dragon for Game Boy, you can don't hesitate to click the thumbs up button, share it on like Facebook or Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe. This is your boy Big Metroid Fan 12 signing off.